lots of time for Q&A afterwards, and then half an hour to hang out and ask Neha questions that you might not have got to, or just chat with each other. We are here in DigitalOcean. Thank you for providing the space. A quick PSA, please grab your food, cans, bottles, and whatnot, and find a trash can so that we don't have to do too much clearing up afterwards. And also a big thank you to Capital One, who's another of our sponsors who helps us put on this event. So with that, I wanted to introduce Neha, who is a director of product management at Oscar. She's been there for about 4 years, which in startup land is a really long time. Her fun fact is that she's a huge Harry Potter nerd. Apparently she hasn't played Quidditch, but I'm not sure I believe her. So please join me in welcoming Neha.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out on this super steamy day. It's disgusting outside, so thank you for coming in. We're in an air-conditioned space. As Tim mentioned, I'm a director of product at Oscar. We're actually right across the street over there, and I've been there for a little over 4 years. So before I ramble for the next 20 minutes, just a little bit about me. Yes, I'm a Harry Potter nerd. I grew up in the beautiful state of New Jersey. I'm also a classic third culture kid. I was born in India and I spent all my summers there. I went to the University of Michigan and got an undergraduate business degree there. And yes, I'm a diehard fan. I love to travel, and this probably started when I spent a summer in Cairo trying to learn Arabic. Don't ask me how my Arabic is anymore. And then when I graduated, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grow up. And so I decided to take the path of consulting to kind of just learn a lot about different aspects of a business. And so I joined American Express in an internal consulting arm, and I spent a lot of time thinking about digital payments from a strategic perspective. And while there, transitioned over to product management sort of by accident, and worked on a product called Serve, which is a prepaid product that built an alternative banking platform for the underbanked. 4 years ago, I joined a young, ambitious startup called Oscar that was trying to tackle healthcare, and I've been there ever since. In my time there, I've grown with the company. I've worked on a whole suite of things, from building internal tools for our servicing team, our sales team, to building user experiences for our providers and our network, and also building our provider data platform, which I'll go into in a little bit. And then I also have helped sort of grow the team since I started. So we were around 100 people when I first started. We are now 1,300, 1,400 and growing. I'm looking at the Oscar squad up front, and continuing to grow. And our product team is over 50 people now, and we're still hiring, so plug there. Great. So I'm going to start out with the biggest understatement of the year or century, you name it, but healthcare is super complicated, and particularly in the United States, it is uber complicated. So I'm just curious, out of everyone here in the room, has anyone had any experiences dealing with healthcare where they're just, been confused or frustrated? Great, yes, that's crazy. I imagine everyone here in this room is well-educated, solves tough problems on a daily basis, and so if we as a group struggle with it, it's kind of terrifying, what the rest of the population deals with. So we're Oscar. We're a health insurance company and a tech company trying to address a lot of these pain points. We strongly believe in engaging with our members to help shape their healthcare experience. And right now we have a little over 240,000 members across 9 different states. So I thought it would be fun to start out by walking you through a bit of a member journey that an Oscar member would go through. And I'm going to highlight different steps that a member would go through, but then I also want you to take note of sort of the ecosystem that the member interacts with, the complexity, and all the different people and touch points that they have. So to start off on the left, let's say you're an Oscar member. Actually, you're not a member yet. You're shopping for a plan. You need health insurance, so you may go to healthcare.gov, or you may go to hioscar.com and shop for a plan. You're looking at the prices, the benefits, the plan design, and you select your plan, and then you enroll. After you enroll, you are then able to download a mobile app or create your online account, and on your app, you're able to manage your account, your bills, view your claims history, your labs, a bunch of different features, and you can also engage with a concierge team. You may also start tracking your steps, so you can sync your steps, and if you meet your goals on a daily basis, you earn $1 a day. Now, let's say you as a member, played at that game of basketball the other day and you fell and your hand really hurts 3 days later and you don't know what to do. Instead of going to the emergency room, you may request a doctor on call visit. So we have a whole suite of virtual primary care physicians. So these are doctors all over the country that are Oscar employed that deliver care virtually. So you can request a call on your app, and one of our doctors will give you a call and give you a consultation. On the doctor side, they actually have a whole suite of care management tools, so they can view our members' clinical history if they have any, their prescription information, their pharmacy information, so that we can make sure that our doctors give the best care and recommendation. So then let's say, unfortunately, our VPCP thinks that you may have broken something or pulled something, so it's probably worth going to a doctor in person. You can then log into your app and search for a doctor. And so using our care router, you can find the best doctor for you based on where they're located. You may like their bio, you may love their photo, who knows, and you select a doctor. You can also schedule an appointment with that doctor because we've actually built a lot of scheduling integrations directly with our provider. On the back end or behind the scenes of all of this, we have a massive network team that's working really hard across all of our markets to build relationships with these providers, sign contracts with all of our providers and facilities, labs, hospital, imaging centers, you name it. They do all of this using a suite of internal tools we've built to manage the network. Now, a few days before you go to your doctor's visit, our doctor may log into the Oscar Provider Portal, which is another experience we've built out, to view information about our members, what their plan is, what their benefits are, so that the appointment can go smoothly. They may recommend that you go take some labs or an x-ray, and then a few weeks later you get a bill in the mail or email that explains how much you owe the doctor and what the cost of your service was. Now, for that to happen, the doctor had to submit a claim to Oscar describing the services that they provided, and then our claim system has to check over 100 different data points to then calculate what services were covered, how much doctor should be paid, and how much a member owes. And then let's say you have questions about your bill, which is totally natural. You can reach out to your concierge team. So the way our concierge team is set up is we have 5 different members that are assigned to a population of members. So every time you as a member may secure a message or call our concierge team, you're going to reach your same team. So they know you, they know your journey. And on the flip side, our concierge team also has a whole suite of concierge tools that allow them to look up member information, action member information, engage with you, generate documents for you, really anything that you need to help you through your healthcare experience. So, as you can tell, it takes a village. And this is not in any way comprehensive of the whole world of different people that we have that are there to support the ecosystem that we've built out. We really believe in being powered by people. And so all the systems and machines that we built are really meant to augment it because healthcare is just functionally very human, and we want to make sure we maintain that essence as well. That being said, there's a lot of users, and a lot of users need a lot of tools to make sure they can actually deliver the best member experience. So we have a long, long list of things that we've built out and a longer list of things that we should be building out to support all of these users. So you may be thinking, how do we manage all these things? And how do we stay on track with our roadmaps? And how do we make sure we're thinking about our members consistently? One of the things that we do is take a user-centric platform approach. So what does that mean exactly? A common theme across all of these users is they need some fundamental sources of truth so they can do their jobs and support our members. So they need to understand who are our members, who are our providers, what are our plans, what are our benefits. So we've really thought about centralizing these sources of truth in our platform and making it configurable and flexible and scalable. And the goals of that is we can build cooler things on top of it, and we can innovate faster, and we can just scale faster. I'll dive into a little bit more around what this entails later in the presentation. So before I dive into that, I thought it would be helpful to sort of take a step back and talk about how we think about product management at Oscar across different levels of the stack. So first, let's talk about user applications. I think this is something that's probably familiar to most of the room. You're building digital applications for a user. You're like obsessed with your user. You're thinking about their every move. And you're really thinking about how to build a visual, intuitive user experience. I'm not going to spend too much time on this space because I think there's a ton of content out there in the product world about this space, but just wanted to anchor around this example. Then there's internal tools. So you may have heard me allude to this a bunch, but there's a whole suite of internal tools we've built at Oscar that directly or indirectly support our members. And so here you're thinking about the user that then supports the end user. So our end users could be members or could be providers in some cases. And in some cases, our users may directly interact with the end user. So for example, our concierge team is speaking with our members. There are some users that may not directly interface with our end users. So, for example, our network team, as I alluded to earlier, spends a lot of time building the network for our members so they can find the right doctors. They may not be directly interfacing, but they have a huge impact on the member experience as well. And so we have a whole suite of internal tools for those teams to support them. The last one I want to talk about, I'm going to spend the rest of my time talking about, is platform. So I alluded to this earlier, but how you can think about this conceptually and tactically is fundamentally a whole suite of data models and services coupled with internal tools that really own these sources of truth. Now, users of platforms could be other products, so other internal user applications or external user applications, or direct user. So anyone that's accessing that data is also a user as well. As you can imagine, there's a wider breadth of users when you're working on platform. And a couple other things to note here is it's fundamentally focused on thinking about scalability and flexibility. And there's a couple other things in terms of the nuances of the product development cycle. So when we're in build mode, it's a lot harder to test and iterate. Like, you can't really A/B test a platform while you're building. So there's a lot more emphasis on the discovery and the scoping work. So I'll dive into that in a second. So speaking of, thought it'd be helpful to go through the product development life cycle for a platform. And so very quickly you'll learn it's not that different. First, we start off with a hypothesis. So just like a bunch of user applications, we really need to understand the users of our platform. So we listen to our users, we monitor data, we shadow teams, we look at external players in the industry to see what's happening, and then we come up with a hypothesis on something that we should be working on. So let's take an example. Members, providers, and internal users need to be able to trust that information about Oscar's providers and networks are accurate. Great, that's a way we can start off and kick off a project. The next step is discovery. So we start diving into understanding what we need to know to help refine our hypothesis and get to sort of a definition at the end. So just like when you're building a user application, you go into user experience ecosystem mapping. So you're trying to understand your user, what channels they use, what questions they have, what touch points they touch, what channels they may ask certain questions in, what they may not ask in other channels, really just mapping that out. When you think about a platform, it's actually very similar. So you're actually replacing user with data. So you're trying to understand that data that your platform owns. What are its touch points? Who are the users that use that information? How do they use that information? What actions do they take with it? And so you're going to build out this huge ecosystem of all the players and users in this space that rely on the information that you're working on. Here's a sample set of different things that we did in terms of building out our provider data model platform, but really thinking through all the use cases, everything from building our networks to working with our regulators to paying claims to supporting our virtual care and so much more. The next step is pretty critical, as I mentioned earlier. The development cycle is a lot harder once you start building, so it's really, really important for you to really test your hypotheses with a bunch of different users, and you can do this using prototypes. So if you think about building prototypes for a user application, you're drawing on a piece of paper or cardboard, or you have a prototype, and you're really just watching and observing users click on buttons, swipe, read information, navigate. What are they consuming? What are they not understanding? It's pretty similar. So this doesn't need to be heavy investment. I've built prototypes using Google Sheets and Splunk dashboards and Periscope dashboards. And fundamentally, what you're trying to present to users is your set of information and how you would categorize it. And so you would be watching how they use it. So how do they look up this information? What questions do they have about this data? How do they use this data? How do they action it? Does it make sense for their workflows? What are they hungry for that they're not seeing right away? There's also users that are responsible for managing and editing this data. So one thing to note here is this is usually coupled with building internal tools for those users that are editing and managing this data, but for them, you're really thinking about, do they get all the information that they need? Do they understand the implications of the changes that they make? Does the data flow in a way that makes sense to them? You're just really observing, refining, iterating. And really, because this is used by so many people, you have to get in front of a bunch of different users and make sure they're bought into what they're seeing. The next step is defining and validating. So through discovery and prototype testing, you're going to start picking up themes and identifying patterns that you're seeing. And one sort of way to anchor your thoughts around how to think about data is thinking about objects and relationships. So for example, we noticed a lot of users were asking a lot of information about providers. So what services do they provide? Where do they go to school? So if you step back, that is a provider. And a bunch of attributes about that provider. So the school they went to, their specialty, et cetera. And typically, those things don't change. There were a lot of users who asked questions about providers and where they practice, and whether they accept new patients at those locations. So if you step back there, that's a provider that has a location that they practice at. So there's a provider with a relationship with a location. And for that location provider relationship, you want to understand whether they accept new patients or they don't. Another thing to note there is that might actually change over time. So where you graduate from doesn't change over time, but you may change practices, you may change whether you're accepting new patients today compared to tomorrow. And so that's another aspect that you have to think about as how you think about people accessing that data. And lastly, users really wanted to know how provider joined our network. So which partner did they come through? What rates should we pay them? So this is when we realized we actually didn't have that information, and so we had to create a new object. So this is a provider related to a contract. And so contract was new to us, and so this contract will represent a lot of the information that users were looking for that we couldn't surface before. Now, when it comes to prioritization, it's pretty analogous to prioritizing a bunch of features that you may have thought through for an application. So you've thought about all these objects, these relationships, you know all the users and their needs, you understand your company's goals. How does that fit into your prioritization framework? You could be using metrics or different other sets of weights to make sure you prioritize the list of things that you're building out. And then last thing, one thing you should note that's pretty important about this space is if you're defining new things, it's sort of your responsibility to make sure the organization understands it. So in this example, we built this new concept of a contract. Now there's a whole bunch of users that now needs to understand what to do with a contract, how it can benefit them. So you're sort of owning this dictionary as well, and this concept, and making sure to share that with the rest of the organization. And lastly, just like everything else, launch is launching. It makes sure you have to test and communicate everything. There's a lot more people you have to keep in sync. There's a lot of users and a larger breadth that you're going to touch. And so there may be teams that are dependent on you for them to test and make changes themselves. You also have to remember there's a whole bunch of operational users that need to change their workflows to consume this new information, action it, and use it in the ways that are effective for their roles and responsibilities.